Every day is a new and exciting day and time here at Weather and Ag in Focus, and it's so exciting that Dean couldn't even make it in today, so he's gone. And Justin from the Lakes was apparently just driving around the Fargo area looking for radio shows to be a part of, so he decided to step in today.
Yeah.
Thanks for stopping at the studio.
Well, yeah, and you reached out, and your initial response was, could you come in and do this? And I'm like, do I have to? Is it do
Oh,
I?
really?
And
Really?
actually, when I saw Addison said you're gonna have to work with Bridgette again, and I said, do I have to?
You do. You do have to.
No,
Yes.
happy to be here.
Yes. The floggings will continue until everybody's attitude approves. So
That's right.
That's a much nicer way of using that saying than how I know it.
We don't need no
That's true.
Dean. Who's that?
So yeah, surprise, Justin. He let me know he was in Fargo. He's like, I'm just blocks away. You know what? Stop by.
This is all
Someone
true,
should
people.
be in the studio, and it's not going to be me. So I'm glad you're there. Thanks
Yeah.
for taking care of things.
Of course.
Now, Dean did leave us a weather hit, so we probably should hear what that sounds like. Addison, what's going on in the weather today? $90-degree days. All right.
It's
Is it better over in Lakes Country on 90-degree days, Justin?
Yeah, it's well, yeah, of course it is always better over there, but no, honestly, this weather isn't that bad. I was looking at and here's why, the dew point, right? The dew point's pretty low. It's been in the 50s. And I know
Mhm.
Addison's giving me a funny look, but you get that dew point in the 60s and 70s. Now you have a not so great day to be outside, unless there's a bunch of water involved.
So over the weekend, it was gardening season here at my house. So my husband and I spent a couple of days doing a lot of yard work, getting the garden in. And I will tell you this, more than once I said, I'm so glad there's a breeze because when you went from 57 on Saturday to, what was it, 109 or so on Monday, it felt like a lot. Or at least that's what it really felt like. So
109. This is not
I'm glad it's improving.
this is not triple digit south with like Phoenix, and everybody thinks it's so hot. I mean, don't get me wrong, did go from like spring to nothing, if we even had a spring, but at least
Right.
everything's popping now. I mean, I was, I do a lot of driving. I drove a ton yesterday, and I didn't see very much in the way of field sprinkling systems on. So I'm guessing we're not too dry. But what's your
Well,
take on that?
and we're newly planted. There's probably not a lot of irrigation systems that are on the swing right now.
Hmm.
There will get time for that. I think that for those who got nervous, they were planting soybeans or even corn and said, it's dry and I'm in a hurry and I'm probably not going to put my pre-emergent herbicide on right now. You will likely regret that later in the summer, even if we do stay through a dry summer, because we'll have breaks in that weed control happening when we don't have that product applied to the soil. Yes, it could be dry right now at application, but the chances are that you're going to see the effects of that when you get your next rainfall. That product will activate and will continue to prevent the additional flushes of weeds that'll be a problem in your crop. So I really want to encourage people to continue to put those pre's on. They do truly matter. And when you listen to our weed control specialists, folks like Dr. Joe Eichley at NDSU, extension weed specialist, he'll say, don't skip the pre's, particularly in soybeans, because we do know, especially with the drier weather right now, you'll see a slow start to the crop, so it won't close the canopy as quickly. So that's going to allow more sunlight in, more weeds to germinate. So just a little bit of rain, whenever we get it, is going to go ahead and activate that pre-emergent herbicide. We are looking at a potential for rain maybe Monday, Tuesday next week. Right now, it's about a 40% chance. We'll see what it does.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at as well. And we did get some storms out that way last night, but they were kind of short-lived, and I was just kind of doing a fast forward on the radar for later. And I think it's going to be about the same for tonight, just a little bit of a chance for some of that rain out there. So it won't be widespread for sure. I was talking to you last time I was here about, people planting or not planting or leasing or not leasing. Now, what is, I asked this before, I don't remember the answer if it was just all of May, but what's the drop dead if you want to have a crop in the field for this year and have it, obviously produce something? Is it mid-June?
A couple of factors. Well, it depends on the crop. Are we planting sunflowers or undryable beans? Because those are going to come later. We're still going to see those planted into June. Corn and soybeans, we see a lot of activity here in May. We also have insurance planting deadlines, and we want to make sure that those crops are planted by their insurance date, because after that, you aren't supposed to be planting because you're not going to get your insurance coverage. Small grains were earlier: wheat, barley, oats, other cereal crops. Speaking of that insurance deadline, let's not forget that for those of you who are listening, if you have recent rainfall, you can call us on the JLA Crop Insurance Hotline, 701-293-9000. Nate Thorsrud is a farmer too, and he can help walk you through all your questions you might have with crop insurance. And then you can let us know what you've been getting for rainfall in your area in those WDAY rain gauges brought to us by Darter Plastics from Becker, Minnesota. And so that's a great opportunity for you to call. You can tackle several things. Tell us your weather, tell us your rainfall, and then again, you can be doing that on the JLA Insurance phone line. I'll take your emails, ag@flagfamily.com. Make sure to get those answered. And you can be watching on the live stream. Addison said today they launched, so you can see us on Facebook, YouTube, and Acres TV, brought to us by Lighthouse Commodities. Justin, you said you put a lot of miles on yesterday, right?
I did. I had to go, let's see, from my place to, I went to Fergus Falls, I went to Wadena, and looking through all the fields, kind of, just to round that point off, I probably saw, I would say about 10% that weren't planted at all and weren't even tilled for that matter. That's why I was asking about, I don't know what it's like overall in North Dakota. This is all Minnesota that I was talking about, but.
We had a conversation about this at my house this morning, and our discussion was we think we're probably at about 90% planted for the most part. Again, there's some of that later crop that's going in where we're still seeing sunflowers, some dryable beans. There's a fair amount of canola that's planted, probably going to be popping up. Unfortunately, it's going to be greeted by flea beetles. Had pictures this morning from those areas around Devil's Lake where they're already seeing feeding activity on young canola plants with flea beetles. The downside to that is not only that your flea beetles are eating on your canola, it means you're probably going to have to spray for flea beetles more than once to try to control them.
That's actually something Addison brought up to me right when I came in. He said he's got a little case of the flea beetles. Obviously, you could take care of that with some lotion, I'm assuming, or something.
But it might be a little bit more of an insecticide situation. And if you have flea beetles, I'm not coming in that production booth anymore to talk to you.
There are many reasons to come to this production room, anyways. That's what the glass is for.
But we've got the livestock report coming up from the American Ag Network. But before we do that, the reason I brought up Justin out driving around, not just looking for radio shows, but doing work, that is tire prices. So this is going to impact us on the farm, but as well as on our passenger vehicles. We have had a huge increase. About 95% of independent tire retailers across the U.S. have raised their prices. 70% of them have even raised them by 11% or more. Why? Supply and demand. Southeast Asian plantations, which are the source of nearly all global output, have been dominated by 30 to 35-year-old trees that are past their peak productivity, and it takes 7 to 10 years before they get the latex to flow in those trees once they're replanting. So the market was down. They weren't spending the money on new trees. Now there's not new trees that are ready to start producing the latex that's needed. Additionally, there are transportation issues. Weather has been a problem for them. They've even been impacted by a leaf disease that's just been hammering those yields in Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. Now, one potential alternative, there's a company in Missouri that is thinking they may be able to take the natural latex that's in a dandelion. So when you break a dandelion stem, there's that milky white sticky sap, which is actually a latex. They're thinking if they could harvest that, that would be the first chance for us to have our own domestically produced latex to make tires. Our next question will be, how many dandelions does it take to make a tire? All of them. Pretty sure you'd need all of them.
And I drove by your place over the weekend, and there's quite the crop of dandelions there, to be honest with you. So, I mean, good start. I mean, you probably have at least 8 or 9 tires there, right?
I know you're AI faking that because you're talking to a house of 2 agronomists. I can guarantee you the dandelion crop is very low. I can't tell you why, but I can tell you it's very low.
Actually, one other point to bring up too on that spike in tire prices was also because of of course, the Iran war, just another thing, and not just because of oil, but there's other petroleum-based raw materials like synthetic rubber, carbon black, and processed oils all come from that part of the world, or at least shipped through there.
And some of the other things you don't think about, sulfuric acid, which is used as a process material in so many different ways, and as well as ammonia. Not just the anhydrous ammonia we use as a nitrogen source in the field, but ammonia is also used in many processes for manufacturing. And all those things are impacting so much more that's going on. Okay, it's time for the livestock report from the American Ag Network. When we return, we do have our guest joining us today, and that will be Scott Hellberg. We're going to be talking about kids and farm safety right after this. Weather and Ag in Focus today. You get me, Ag Director Bridgette Readel, and also I'm joined by Justin from the Lakes. He stopped by to help ask questions and be a part of today's show. So thanks, Justin. Much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Guest who's joining us today is Scott Heiberger. He is with, well, a couple of different organizations: National Farm Medicine Center, National Children's Center for Rural and Ag Health Safety, as well as the Marshfield Clinic Research Institute. And Scott really specializes in what's going on when it comes to farm safety for kids, and what a timely topic since everybody is getting out of school. Scott, good to see you today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what you do in all of those critical roles.
Well, like you said, the National Children's Center is one of our entities here, and we're one of 12 safety centers around the country that are funded by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and we're the only center of those NIOSH Ag centers that specializes in child ag safety. We've had the center since 1997, and this time of year, I was thinking to when I was in school. Up until I was 18, I would spend every summer at my grandparents' farm in East Central Illinois. And it gets to be May, you just can't wait to get out. I couldn't wait to get to the farm, couldn't wait to operate every bit of machinery I could, work with all the large animals, etc. I was not thinking about safety. Luckily, my grandparents were keeping an eye on safety to make sure I had a safe environment. But it's really up to the adults. It's up to us as parents and grandparents and managers to really put young people in a good situation and match jobs to their ability levels as we get into summer here. One statistic that stands out: approximately half of all fatal injuries that occur to young people on the job occur in agriculture, even though agriculture is a relatively small part of total jobs. So I guess the two things really to think about are, for children who are working, make sure to match them to the right job. And for children who are very young, keep them out of the work site, at least for the very hazardous jobs.
What are some things that you have started to see on the rise? Have you seen specific accidents, or have you seen changes in safety to prevent those accidents that have really been important to that environment for kids, Scott?
Yeah, I think we all, the farm parents of today grew up with bicycle helmets and wearing seat belts, and so I think people are just growing up with more of a safety mindset in general. And so I think we've seen some improvements as far as supervising kids, keeping the very young kids out of the work site. But to your question, of course, ATVs are always an issue, really an issue unto themselves, both recreation and for work. But we see a lot of the same types of things, which is why we keep sort of repeating ourselves or emphasizing through the years. One of the themes we see, and particularly tragic, is very young children in the work site, very young children being backed over by a skid steer, slipping off, the parent or grandparent's lap on a tractor and being run over. Just being in those situations where an adult is trying to concentrate on the work at hand, at the same time they're trying to keep an eye on the kids. But it's a difficult, potentially hazardous mix, and so we do see kind of some recurring themes with young children in the worksite. Otherwise, as far as trends overall, there's actually some good news. Over the last 20 years or so, the rate of non-fatal injuries has dropped off 50 to 60%. So people are changing their practices, I think, being more aware. Folks like our center are trying to get the word out and come up with ideas for keeping children safe and matching them to their ability levels for these jobs. And one interesting thing, though, even though non-fatal injuries are heading downward and have been heading downward, the fatal injuries continue to stay at about the same level. It's about every 3 days a child dies in some sort of a injury on a farm. So for whatever reason, that's kind of stubbornly persistent.
Hey, Scott, is some of the downtrend on that because of some of the additional tech now that's in a lot of the farm equipment, and or you mentioned skid steers, different radars that will tell you if an object's there that shouldn't be, things like that.
Yeah, overall, I don't have a good answer for your question, but even with some of the improved technology, when it comes to skid steers, um, we have not been able to see any kind of a downward trend there. The headlines just continue to pop up every so often with another child, and obviously it's hard to see. Anybody that's been in a skid steer knows it's just hard to see out of those. But I don't have a good answer to your technology question. Sometimes overall, uh, some of these safety features, of course, are excellent and have paid dividends. But now, we're getting into some newer technologies that maybe we don't fully understand, and maybe there are some uh, downsides as well as upsides to some of the new technologies coming out. But as much as things change, the more they remain the same. It seems like that. The tractor accounts for most injuries in some way, shape, or form to young people, and also large animals are another one. And uh, those two things continue to stay near the top.
And probably we don't even need the high tech. There's maybe two things that come to mind right off the bat. Keep kids out of situations that could go badly. And I've really noticed an increase in farm kids wearing high
I
visibility
was just thinking, yeah, vest.
shirts. Yeah. Yeah. If they're wearing shirts or vests or something, especially when you have a busy yard, a lot of people, a lot of drivers coming in and out that you might not be familiar with, that's a great way just to highlight the fact that the kids are out there. They're that fast moving yellow flash.
That's actually yeah, that's excellent. And like you say, it's low tech, low cost, and it just plants the idea of safety.
Hmm.
The other thing I would throw in there, young people, once your hearing gets damaged, you don't get that back, and so just making PPE readily available, making sure that those earplugs are nearby, sunblock, some things that are not necessarily purely farm related, but just in general, trying to take care of your skin, take care of your hearing, eye protection, and having these PPE nearby, you're more likely to use them. And so that's something that we as adults can model, which is very important. Model safety behavior, and just have these items handy.
One thing I was looking at too, in kind of research for your appearance here, was using strong physical barriers, locks, things like that around different things like ponds, manure pits, what have you.
Yeah, and we know that kids find a way. They've got enough time to,
Oh yeah.
to figure it out. They'll try to overcome it. But you're right. To take those steps. Um, what I kind of imagined when my kids were growing up, I never wanted to be in a headline. I would imagine headlines like, you know, uh, son of farm medicine employee, you know, falls from a tall ladder, or gets run over, or just all these things. I would play these headlines in my head. Like, I don't want to be part of that. So I would always try to think ahead and anticipate. And locking things up, keeping hazardous things out of reach is one thing that we can do as parents to try to anticipate. Um, for a lot of farms, the work environment is the home environment, and it overlaps. But to try to anticipate um, those safety hazards, and really thinking again of kids getting out of school and very young children. Obviously, farms are great places to grow up. We agree with that and we embrace that. And most of us have spent long periods of time or grown up on farms here at our center. And so we know that there are positives. And what we're trying to do is just to minimize the hazards. And in the case of very small children, there's a pride. During harvest time, planting time, it's common on social media to see photos of taking your kids along in the tractor, and um, being with you as you're doing the work. We know there's a very deep pride in all that. We're just suggesting that when there's real hazardous work to be done, when you're maybe sprung out yourself from pushing yourself, and lack of sleep, etc., if at all possible, we really recommend trying to keep the very young kids, the toddlers, out of the work site, at least when it involves jobs that are left to um, where you need your concentration. You need to focus on what you're doing. Not to emphasize too many negative things, but we have um, an online resource. It's called Ag Injury News, and it's a compilation of about 5,000. I think we're up to 5,000 articles or news reports. And like the name implies, it's looking at injuries in agriculture. You can filter by state and age and type of equipment and all different ways, and really get almost a real-time snapshot of what's happening in the United States regarding farm injuries. Now, it's not a ag injury news is not a official repository of all injuries. It's merely a snapshot of available news reports that are online. But nonetheless, it is something that's it's useful to us to kind of see what the trends are, and
And
it's also a good reminder, yeah, that stuff when you have little kids in the work site, bad things can happen.
it can. And we've got to get to a break. But first, Scott, I think Justin's got someone who has a question for us.
Yeah, we have Jim on the line that's got a question for Scott. Go ahead, Jim. What's your question?
Well, I think one of the big things we have to look at as far as we want to protect children on these farms, maybe we need the parents need to start taking a little responsibility instead of buying them these little dune buggies and runners and stuff like that. They can get over at the farm store or whatever, and they can run up and down the ditches and without helmets on and everything else. Because hey, you live out on the farm, you can do whatever you want. These kids end up getting injured, maimed, and everything else. I mean, come on. Just because you live on the farm doesn't mean it's just all safety goes out of there's no rules to it.
That's
Yeah,
not a bad point to say right there, Jim, because you're pointing out, we can still have rules with those things. So, Scott, if you have a comment there before we go to our break.
yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's of course not just a farm thing; it's all rural areas, and again, it's up to the adults in the situation to put kids in a good situation, and these machines get more powerful and more powerful, and whether it's on the water or on the land. So yeah, that's our job.
I have a little teaser before we go to break. Just if you could hold your answer until afterwards, Scott. But so we've talked a little bit about some of the safety tips, what to do. You mentioned there's still injuries happening. Maybe give some advice on the other side here of what kind of things as a parent or a farm help that should keep on hand. I know like a year ago or so on WAG, I think there was a whole segment on tourniquets, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to keep on hand? But if you can hold that till the other side and let us know.
Yep, we'll talk about it right then.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Justin from the Lakes Country, hanging out with Bridgette and Mr. Addison in our booth. But we're talking more with Scott Heiberger. Hopefully I'm not butchering your name there, Scott. Communications Manager, National Farm Medicine Center, and National Children's Center for Rural and Agriculture Health and Safety. So we were talking before the break a little bit about different things you could do to keep your children safe on the farm and or family and or workers. But my question was to you is, what kind of things do I want to have on hand? These are musts, like whether it's a very expanded first aid kit, certain medicines, or even, as I mentioned before the break, I think it was about a year ago, we had somebody on WAG that was talking about a tourniquet and how to apply it. I mean, just anything you can do to kind of help those serious injuries before somebody's airlifted or an ambulance gets there, because often they're going to be far out in the country, Scott.
Yeah, and I wish my son was here. He's on an EMT and an ambulance in Milwaukee. He's had that job for about a year, and he would have a quick answer for all of these. I'm going to have to punt a little bit on the emergency preparedness as far as first aid on the spot. Like you say, it is important because response times are a little lower. And I would bring up, I guess, to answer the question, and Bridgette, you're familiar with this, the RF program, Rural Firefighters Delivering Agriculture Safety and Health. And that's a program that we facilitate. We've had a number of trainings in the upper Midwest. And what RF does, it aims to equip rural first responders with ag health and safety knowledge to prevent farm injuries and to improve emergency response. So, like the National Children's Center, we focus on preventing injuries in the first place. Not to say we can take a pass and ignore when there are injuries. And so RF which is part of the National Farm Medicine Center, it's beyond just the Children's Center. We work through rural first responders because they're highly trusted members of the community. They know their communities. And one of the things we emphasize with the RF program is to encourage farmers to invite the local fire department out to their place, not for an inspection, not to, for citations or anything, but just to familiarize that department with the farm, because 911 is still the best way to go, obviously, as soon as possible. And since every minute counts and the response times are longer, it really makes a difference to be specific, and it really matters that the local department isn't messing around and taking a wrong turn, that they know exactly where to go. And one way you can help prepare for that is to invite them out, make up an emergency plan. We have a couple online tools that can help a farmer do that. One of them is called Farm Mapper, and it's free. They can go onto that site. It's got an aerial view of most farms, most properties in the United States. And there are icons on there, for instance, where the chemicals are kept, where the electrical shutoff is, things that a first responder would want to know when they come out, and to protect themselves, as well as do a better job of dealing with the emergency. So those are a couple things that I would suggest.
And also, one other thing that we mentioned, a lot of us grew up, like you said, without having all of the safety features. And our caller, Jim, had a great point when he says, we should put some safety rules onto our farm and what we do with our kids. We have these vintage tractors that we all grew up with, and they're wonderful, and they're a great piece of nostalgia. But they should probably also have a rollover protection system on them. I know you took them off for a reason, but especially when you have young children who are less experienced, and even for yourself, if you're working on steep slopes, probably putting those ROPS back on those machines. That's probably another little hint we could share with our audience today.
Yeah, you're going to get me going now. And again, there's a great example of tradition. We want to celebrate tradition, but then when it overlaps into safety, one of the local high schools here reinvigorated their Drive a Tractor to School program for the first time in many years. And so that was cool. That was a celebration. But I go on Facebook, and they must have put out a memo to do only antique tractors, because there was no cabs. It was all old, tricycle style. It was really something. Back to your point, the roll bars. There is funding is always an issue. There is a national ROPS rebate program. ROPS R4U, I think, is the website. R, the number 4U.
Mm-hmm.
Funding does vary by state, and offhand, I'm not sure of North Dakota and Minnesota. But no matter if there's a tractor, especially one that's your hired help or your family's going to use, absolutely. And the one thing about the ROPS R4U, the National ROPS Rebate Program website, and there's a phone number that escapes me right now. I can maybe look that up before we get off. Even if there's not funding in your state for a rebate, the hotline and the national rebate people can look up which, if a roll bar is made that could fit your tractor, number one, and if there's more than one, the different options you have. Definitely worth looking into. That's a really great point. We just published a story on our Telling the Story Project website, and it was a young man. You talk about this time of year, people are excited, kids are excited. He was an eighth grader in Wisconsin. He had just passed his tractor safety course, and he started working for the farmers who rented the family's land. And just several weeks after his eighth grade graduation, took a corner. He had a full load of haylage behind him in the wagon. It was a tricycle configuration, and it wasn't even a very steep ditch. It was just the weight behind him, and it was just enough to tip it, and he died. And I think of myself getting out of school, and all these kids that are getting out of school now. When you face situations you've never faced before, a lot of responsibility goes with that. Again, as adults, to put kids in good situations, and having proper equipment, and the standard protective equipment is part of that.
No matter the size of the machine, whether we're talking with lawnmowers and weed eaters, all the way up to semis and combines, we have to put some safety out there. Our kids are our most precious crop, and we're going to want to look out for them. Scott, I want to say thank you for joining us today. We didn't even talk about safety with agritourism. We may have to pick that up on a different day as we get closer to the You Pick Strawberries, pumpkin patches, and so many other things that happen in this region as well.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. We will plan for that. Meanwhile, everybody else should plan to stick around because Justin from the Lakes is going to be doing Wednesday weather trivia next.
Go nowhere.
All right.
Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for sticking around on this gorgeous day outside. We were talking about the weather, just to round that out real quick. Basically, it's going to be hot, right? It's going to be in the 90s.
It's going to be gross.
It's going to be, it's going to be, God, how gross is like, it's just not, the dew point's not
Anything
up there
above
yet.
like 67 is gross to me.
I guess. So, and then chance for some thunderstorms, and then we get more into some actual rain at the beginning of next week. And I forgot to almost say, we have our guest sitting in here, Bridgette Readel. She's around from time to time.
That's right. I thought I'd make it today.
So, but we have our Weather Trivia Wednesday, so we have to talk about that. This is going to be our for our rain gauge, sponsored by Darter Plastics. No more bulky.
Actually, hold on.
Sure.
It's not the rain gauge. The bait up, not the rain gauge.
I'm sorry.
So it's okay. It's okay.
No more bulky, leaky bait buckets or dunking your hand in the ice water for bait. You can replenish that stale, low oxygen water without the loss of live bait. And that's going to be brought to you by our JLA crop insurance line. Get the coverage that fits your operation. You can call Nate Thorsrud at JLA Crop Insurance today, 701-371-0311. And he'll help you with all those crop insurance needs. So what's the question? So I was told I could come up with this question. So this is hopefully a good one, not too easy for some people.
Yeah.
What is the proper term for the weather vane that you see on top of farmhouses that is adorned with a rooster? That's the question. Any ideas? Now, Addison didn't know. Don't say it out loud. Do you know, Bridgette?
I know this. I just
this.
can't think of it.
So give us a call, by the way, at 701-293-9000 with that answer, and we will get you one of those.
Yes, there's a real name for it. It's not just weather vane.
Nope.
And it sits a lot of times like on a barn. It sits on top of a little extra square addition, if you will, the cupola. So now
I feel like it's too hard.
On top of that. No, it's not too hard.
It's not too hard?
It's a good one. It's a good one.
So again, what the question is, what is the proper term for a weather vane that you see on top of farmhouses that is adorned with a rooster?
Mm-hmm. There's a name for it.
So you got a call on line one. Go ahead. What you think that answer is for that?
I would say it's a cupola.
Nope. That's not it. Any other? I'm trying to think if I could give any hints. It's a hard one.
Our caller answered cupola, and I would love to see him be like, "Now go look one more step further." It's because the weather vane goes on top of the cupola.
That's right. So I'm gonna have trouble giving out any hints for this one for obvious reasons. Because we have another caller on line one. What's your answer? What's your try?
I'm gonna say it's a weathercock.
That's right. You are the winner, my friend. Yeah, thanks for calling. So did you know that right away? Or did you have to look it up?
No, I knew that. I have a couple of them actually. So
that's awesome. Well, good stuff. Hey, I got a secondary question for you, and hold on, and Addison will get your information. But do you know what we were talking about how the hot temperatures for today. Do you know what the world's hottest recorded temperature is? And I'll give you a hint. It's in the United States.
Hot.
Oh man, I would have to say
it's a bonus question. You're going to win either way.
Yeah. Well, I know there was the hottest day is somewhere in like South Mid North Dakota, but I would have to say maybe close to 130 in Death Valley, maybe.
That's right. You're almost there. 134. Yep, in Death Valley.
That's where I was going. Oh, way to hit that one. I'm glad for you.
So, yeah, hang out for a second. Yeah, good call on the weathercock, and obviously, Addison will get your information, or we'll get you that sent out. Any other thoughts here, Bridgette, before we close it out?
I do. I want to make sure to let folks know that Tech Support Farm, it's not just about what you're thinking that might be happening over your cybersecurity to prevent hacking with your emails, etc. You're also going to want to protect images of your farm, and there's a reason why you want to go do that fence check assessment online with techsupport.farm, because I was listening to a podcast this morning. They were talking about AI images, or AI is taking images of your farm and then using it to spoof you, whether it's in real estate transactions, whether it's in social media posts where they're not telling the true story, and it could actually promote some animal activism cases around you. So take that fence check assessment at Tech Support Farm. Justin, thanks for stopping by today. Much appreciated. And folks, stay tuned for tomorrow. It's going to be another great day on Weather, Nag, and Focus. Jay Thomas Show is next.
Absolutely.